Hello, everybody. Welcome to week two of Jason Scott Lee Month for reserve seating. And we are talking about one of the kind of unsung, I won't say classics, that's a little bit much, but unsung fun movies. I was hoping for something a little bit more, with a little bit more pizzazz. Unsung fun. If you went to see, say, Wang Chung in concert, would you be you happy or sad if Unsung Fun opened for Wang Chung? So we are talking about Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book from 1994, directed by Stephen Sommers and starring Jason Scott Lee, Lena Headey, Sam Neill, Carrie Elways, Jason Fleming, John Cleese,
A murderer's row.
a lot of
Indeed.
animals,
I was gonna say a big tiger,
Yeah.
uh, a big bear,
big bear, some
A
elephants,
wolf,
a wolf.
wolf.
a
Yeah.
panther or two. Yeah.
Who do you think the wolf was more akin to, George Clooney or Brad Pitt of The Wolves? Rudyard Kipling, The Jungle Book was a movie I saw in theaters, and I remember having like the biggest FOMO ever of seeing another movie when I went to see The Jungle Book because directly across the hall was the theater showing Demon Knight, and I couldn't get into
Oh,
Demon Knight,
man.
and I was just like. One day, baby, one day. But in the meantime, I went to see The Jungle Book and was not really looking forward to it. And then I came out of the theater a big fan because I think that the movie um I wasn't thinking this at the time, but when I watched it yesterday, I was like, oh, this is like they took My Fair Lady and mixed it with First Blood, which is kind of an unbelievable thing to do.
It is.
And I really enjoyed it, especially in the third act. Rosalie, what's your history with the movie?
So this was my first time watching it. I kind of thought I had seen it before, but I
Mhm.
guess I had just seen the cover of it at the movie store a few times.
Mhm.
And I've seen obviously the animated original Disney movie a number of times. Think it's really fun, like the songs, etc. And I've seen the more recent live action remake. Not particularly because I wanted to, but because it was nominated for Oscars, and I do this thing where I torture myself and watch all the Oscar nominated movies every year. But yeah, I really enjoyed this watch. I don't know why, but in my head, I was thinking that like Jason Scott Lee was going to be a little kid in it, but that wouldn't really make sense given like the timing of this movie and Dragon the Bruce Lee story. They did not shrink him Oompa Loompa style or anything. He's like a full adult. But I loved how it turned into like, Indiana Jones slash, almost like a Pirates of the Caribbean vibe at some
Mhm.
point. I wrote in my notes that Lena Headey walked across a bridge so Keira Knightley could parlay and sword fight in Pirates because they definitely have like a similar vibe. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was me. I mean, I've definitely seen this before on like tape or something like that back way back when. I have not seen it forever. The Jungle Book never really like one of my properties. Like I've seen the animated one.
Mhm.
It was never like a favorite of mine. But rewatching this was really fun. And obviously, I was texting you, Adam, when I was watching it. I was like, the cast is just like it's just the perfect casting for like shortcut casting. Like you put Sam
Yeah.
Neill in
Yeah.
there to play this role. I mean, Carrie Elwes shows up. You're just like, hey, he's the bad guy. Like I know he's
Yeah.
the bad
Yeah.
guy. John Cleese gets to like harump and like fumble around and fall over. You're like, okay, he'll be like the stalwart supporting guy, and all
Mhm.
that. Lena Headey, obviously, now we have a lot of baggage with from like Dread and Game of Thrones, but when she's playing like a young ingenue, you're like, oh, I can see that. I can kind of see where that came in, and then obviously Jason Scott Lee right away. You see what he's doing. It was cool. It was cool to compare these two performances from this and from Dragon because obviously in
Mhm.
Dragon he's so like
Mhm.
not verbose, but he's like doing a lot more speaking. He's doing a Bruce Lee impression.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, Jason Scott Lee is much more quiet and he's more physical
Mhm.
and all that. It was an interesting performance. But for me, this is just like such like Summers bump cinema. Like it's just like the dude
Totally.
just knows how to make an adventure movie. He knows how
Yeah.
to do it uncynically. He's not doing it with his tongue in cheek or anything like that. Like he just wants to make a big old fashioned adventure.
There's so many directors like from this era, like with Summers or Stephen Hopkins, or like they've got like five. They've got like their fist of movies that work. And but they're so much finished products. They're like old Hollywood directors where they just like you said, they just know how to do an adventure movie. And I also love that this movie, I've used this example for other movies, but this is also another example where this is like his new nightmare to the Mummy's Scream.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell he's like working out,
Yeah.
learning from what he picked up on the Jungle Book when he applies it to the Mummy. And yeah, the Jason Scott Lee thing is interesting too that you brought up because he in Dragon, obviously it's like all on him.
Mhm.
He's what I was listening to this interview where James Cameron was talking about like casting Leonardo DiCaprio and in Titanic, and DiCaprio was saying like, "Well, what if I have this like tick, or if I have this like affliction?" And James Cameron's like, "You don't need any of that. Your actor challenge is to hold the center. That's your job.
Mhm.
Like, you have to hold the center of the movie." And I feel like in Dragon, Jason Scott Lee is so good at doing that. And in this one, it's almost like a more challenging version of that because he's robbed of his, it's unsung fun. He has to be unsung fun,
He
where he
does.
was sung fun before. And now he has to rely on the ensemble and just kind of hold the center while other people like Carrie Elways or Lena Headey are getting their moments and things like that.
I really liked how he portrays like the innocence, but also he's not an idiot. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
there's a fine line there, and he has that great physicality that would have made him good in like silent movies, even I think,
Totally.
because he's able to capture a lot with his eyes and with his facial expressions. And so, even though he spends at least a chunk of the movie not really speaking, in human words, I think he still communicates a lot, and even in just his interactions with the animals, which can we talk? I mean, we have to talk about the fact that these are real, actual, like somewhat dangerous animals that they're
Mm.
working with.
Disney
That
could never
cannot have
say
been
it.
easy. Yeah.
Disney would never say. I said literally my letterbox review of this movie was like working with animals was like a fucking nightmare. Like I
Yeah.
Yeah.
can't imagine what directing this movie must have been like for those segments.
I saw an interview with the director, with Stephen Sommers, and he was like, "Well, we had kids, we had animals, we had fire, we had
Children
sand.
and
Like, what else
animals.
could we throw at it, right?" So he was game for it all, and I don't think you see those kinds of risks, just physical risks, being taken as much now because we can just CGI it in later.
Yeah, he should get a lot of credit for it because even like if my memory's right, even the Favreau Jungle Book is more like the Mufasa movie now with
Mhm.
the animals than this was all like optical effects and things like that, and having like two planes like next to each other to make it look like a little boy was like right face to face with a lion and stuff.
It's
Yeah.
so funny because I was sitting there watching it last night, and obviously, like you said, there's that motion control camera thing where it's like you can tell that it's just two shots that are layered on top of each other, where the Tiger and Brandon Scott Lee or Jason Scott Lee, excuse me, are not in the room together. They're
Mm.
they're matting those two shots together.
Yeah.
And when you take the unreality of that and you compare it with the unreality of like the Mufasa movie where the animals are just clearly CGI cartoons, it's like
Mhm.
what percentage of unreality would you prefer? I would much prefer the former. Like, I would much
Yeah.
prefer to see a shot that's clearly two matted shots together than this like cartoon nonsense. And like, I just think if it's a matter of degrees, why not go for the more analog approach? You know what I mean? At least you're getting a real animal, and that's just to me, it's just worth so much. And as we said, with the idea of the work that goes into it, like I'm not saying CGI artists and motion capture artists are not artists. I'm not saying it's like hard. I know it's incredibly difficult, but there's a craft to this type of special effect where I can see the seams, but it makes me appreciate it more.
Because I like movies like Life of Pi, where, I know there was quite a lot of CGI work that went into it, and it's gorgeous, it's beautifully made. But for something like this movie, where it is kind of drawing the parallels between human world and animal world, and it has, uh, like all these shots of him both as a kid and as an adult, and then you see the other people that feel like so out of place. I just think it makes it more, I don't know, it feels more authentic, that we feel more physically present there. And to me, it's like the difference between practical effects and other types of effects, where yeah, we know it's fake, but you can see how much work went into it, and that makes us kind of bridge the gap in our own minds.
Can I ask you both two Siskel and Ebert questions related to the Jungle Book?
Yes.
All right, so Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars and a thumbs up. Gene Siskel gave it 1 star and a thumbs down. Um, Roger's complaint was that, or his main complaint of like why it wasn't maybe more than 3 stars was he said that it was basically wrong to have used the name Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book when really you were just making like an Indiana Jones adventure. So does that bother you in any way, or like do you think you have to be like a real Jungle Book purist to be like, hey, I came here to see Rudyard Kipling's The
Right.
Jungle Book, and you just took the character names and did whatever you wanted with them.
I'm
Like,
fine with it because, like, I'll watch Bram Stoker's Dracula all day, and I guarantee you, Bram
yeah.
Stoker did not have Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves in mind when he wrote the book. So I have
It's
no
nowhere
problem.
near what that book is.
And then Siskel's argument was the jewels looked fake. And Roger Ebert was just like, this at a certain point, you have to admit to yourself that this is a movie. And he goes, oh, thanks, Roger. I know this is a movie. The snake, I remember the snake being really, really scary when I was in junior high, and it doesn't look too good anymore. Maybe Anaconda ruined it for me. I don't
Probably
know.
what it was. Yeah, your stakes for snakes.
Yeah.
Listen, your
Your
snake
snake
snake.
stakes were not
I,
high enough.
Yeah.
I hate snakes. Like I can't even like Google image. Like one time, I was curious what the snakes looked like that the assassins in Kill Bill were named after. And
Mhm.
I Google imaged them and I gave myself like a panic attack,
Oh
basically.
no.
I miss movies like this. I wish Disney did live action adventure movies and they were released in theaters still, because they kind of had like a cottage industry of that for a really long time.
Adam, you said you really love this one. Like this was you said you joked last week like you probably like this one more than anybody. Is there something about it that really touches you? And then with the Jason Scott Lee of it all, since we're celebrating him this month, what about
Yeah.
this performance is in particular so good for you?
I think that it's because I sort of like had a thing for underdog clamshell Disney movies. That's like how I'll defend it. It's like there was the Disney movies that everybody liked, like The Lion King and Aladdin and things like that. And then in the 90s, there was also like the underdog clamshell movies where it's like you're holding it, I'm holding up the VHS. I'm like, have you seen The Jungle Book? Have you seen a Goofy movie? Have you seen First Kid? It's like those where I'm just like, no, these are like 3.5 star bangers and people just don't know about it. And I think I just sort of got an inclination on that first viewing in theaters where I was just like, oh, this is one of those, and not enough people are talking about it. And me being able to be afforded the position of championing it more than anybody else is, I guess, too good of an offer to pass up. So I sort of fit that role. And then the Jason Scott Lee of it is just I think that he's just so in his element in these types of adventure stories, like Rapa Nui even. And like that movie's not great, but like he jumps full into it with his physicality and then also with his earnestness. And if there's anything I like more than an earnest performer, it's Jim Varney,
I
but I
was hoping
also
you were going
really
there.
like earnest performers.
It's another example of where I could feel it coming. Like I felt that
Uh-huh.
little pause you did. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, here it comes! Here it comes! He's
Uh-huh.
thinking."
You can always tell
Yeah.
because 2 sentences before the punchline, I get a twinkle in my eye. I can be like,
As someone as someone who not only participates in these and is friends with you, but also edits these episodes, trust me, I know when the twinkle
Yes.
goes in your eye.
I really liked that it took a stand on like British imperialism in a way that I wasn't necessarily expecting in like a Disney movie theoretically
mm,
for kids. They really had no problem making that whole cohort be the bad guy and showing how, they were in there shamelessly like killing the animals and stealing the jewels and claiming things for England and all of that. And I appreciated that aspect of it because it just wasn't something I was expecting. And I'm not certain that that Disney movies made now necessarily would take that kind of stand. I just
yeah.
think, in interest of like international appeal or, appealing to general audiences, those types of things get sort of sanded down
The,
if they're there at all. So
the
I really,
roster of appropriate villains in a movie was much larger than it is
yeah,
now. I feel like now
Totally.
we've really narrowed that to like who it's okay to sort of target. And before it
Mhm.
was much more sort of, that was much wider.
All
Right.
right, so we will be back next week with week 3 of Jason Scott Lee month, and we're gonna cover a 1998 movie. It's sort of a crossover celebration with F This Movie Fest. So we're gonna talk about Paul W.S. Anderson's Soldier with Kurt Russell and Jason Scott Lee. So until next time.
Oh man, I got nothing.
These seats are unsung fun.
There we
Hey,
go.
see, this is why we keep Rosalie around. She picks it up right when I
Yeah.
comes up and